guess I'm gonna open the Tuesday, January 28th Town Council meeting. It is 6:30 almost, so we're gonna start. Discussion items on the agenda. Consideration to adopt a leash law for the town of Appomattox, and we got a guest speaker, Willis, and help me with your last name if you don't mind. Boisine, all right. Animal Control Officer for Appomattox?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we welcome you to the town council meeting, and were you gonna do a presentation, or?
I was thinking it was gonna be more like answering questions, but
All
I
right.
can't do whatever you guys need.
I'll turn it back over to you, Rob, then, if,
Yeah, I think he was just coming to kind of give you an idea of what we need to do in order to
Okay.
establish a leash law. We wanted to go that route and provide the benefits of doing so.
Yeah, come on up here and talk to us.
Okay, yeah, fine.
so, we're contemplating adding a leash law to our town ordinance, so we'll let you give us some pros and cons, I guess, of benefits and disadvantages.
And
Okay.
how to help y'all out.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, when we first just brought this to our attention where you guys were considering enacting it, immediately like a pros and cons list gets thought of. I can't really think of any cons personally, other than the fact that some people just don't like being restricted on what they can or can't do. But pros, there are some people in town who have potentially dangerous dogs, but we can't get involved with them until they do something that allows us to. So it could be more of a preventative measure if people have to keep their animals either on a leash or within command, in a fence, any means of confinement. So there's a lot of the times, especially when school's in, I see people on the sidewalks. There's times I'm going into court. There was one day I was going into court and I seen a dog running down the sidewalk. And I was just like, wow, that dog shouldn't be there. I couldn't address it because I was going to be late to go to court. But there's really, even if I knew who that dog belonged to, there's really nothing I can do other than to ask him, hey, can you please put your dog back where it came from? There's a particular property, I could get the address wrong, but there's like a rehabilitation behind a business center where there's like a dentist office and stuff in it too. It's on Court Street.
Yeah, the Husky.
Yes,
The Husky has moved.
yes. Before it did, that Husky was very problematic because the owner
Yeah.
chose to, I mean, he kind of spoke aggressively towards us. One time we took the dog to our shelter, and when I spoke to he's the manager, I think, of the rehabilitation, you know, he's like, hey, I have elderly patients
Right.
coming in who are rehabbing injuries. So they're here for a reason. The dog's friendly, but it jumps up, pushes them over, like it could be a problem. So when we talked to the owner, there wasn't much care there. Luckily, like you said, they've since moved. That was, I think we had about a week or two where we were going there about every day and having to say like, hey, please. But their idea was like they'd open their door, let the dog out to use the bathroom, and shut the door behind them, which is pretty common with most people I deal with. But when you're right in town, right near a very busy business center, it created some issues. I mean, I have another, there's a particular address on Lee Grant Avenue we go to a lot. The gentleman there, I think he has 2 dogs currently, but he'll let them run free, and there's an apartment complex nearby. They're terrified of the dog. Dog's never done anything to them, but they're petrified. Everybody we speak to. So when we talk to him, like, hey, can you try to keep your dog on your property? You know, there's nothing in this county. It's leash free. There's no confinement. So we're kind of tied up until if that dog was to bite or do something that we'd be able to actually take action against.
Now, we do have in our code book section, chapter 6, we do have an ordinance for keeping dogs. you know, all dog lots, dog houses, kennels, that's mostly for the smell. It's not actually what you would call leash law. And then we have the dangerous animal code, which is, more, you have an issue with one that's attacking. So, I was telling you, back in the 80s, we did have a leash law in Appomattox. You were required to keep your dog on a leash, or they were picked up by the doggy mobile and taken to the animal shelter, and we had to pay to get them back
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
So, that might be something that they can consider. Would that be helpful for y'all?
We have a fee currently, it's $25 for the first day, and then any day after that, we charge 10. Sometimes it's enough of a deterrence for some
Yeah.
people. And it really is supposed to say like, hey, if you know your dog's missing and you're actively looking for it, if you come on that same day, we're not gonna charge you, please, we only have so much space, come get your dog.
But do, like in the husky incident, would y'all actually pick the husky up and put it in the vehicle?
We did it one time.
Okay.
It was, the problem with that situation was like their property kind of bordered the parking lot of that business. So the one time that it was picked up was in the parking lot, which gave us the right to do it, and it was our newer officer at the time, and she didn't know where the dog actually came from until she called me. I was like, oh, you were right there. But could be a learning experience here, so let's talk to the guy when he comes and gets his dog, and he was furious.
Yeah, and that dog went to the daycare. I live behind the daycare, kinda. I've had that dog, I don't know how many, I knew his name, you know. But it's like, here, my thoughts on that, and there was another dog that would just continue to get loose, and I have several dogs in a fenced-in yard, so they just get drawn to my house, I feel like. My thing is, yeah, okay, your dog gets loose, you pick them up, we're sorry, that's like a freebie. But to me, can we not fine them when it's over and over again? Because it's habitual offenders, you know, they just keep, they just, you know, and then are you checking them to make sure they have rabies? Are you checking, do they have county tags? Like, I say fine them, and that might help, you know? I don't know, I'm just,
Well, no, you're right. That is, there's people who, just like in police work, you have your like habitual offenders where
Yeah.
it's almost at least once a week, like, oh, I gotta go talk to such and such, or somebody called about them. So then we get to the point where like, okay, they're becoming a nuisance to other people, rather than if their dog sits there for 3 days, then we are gonna charge them that amount.
yeah,
Before the dog is released, they'll have to prove it has the rabies shots. And there is times, like, we can do that. There's also other times, like, we have 20 runs. I think right now, we have, I could be wrong, we probably have closer to 40 dogs on our shelter right now with 20 runs.
yeah.
So when it comes to like.
There's no room.
If they
Pick 'em
come,
up.
yeah, if they're like, hey, I don't have $50, which I don't know if they really do or don't. They're like, I can't pay 50, but if I come get it and you just give me my dog, I'll come take it back. We're like, okay, but you need to understand, like,
Yeah.
there has to be repercussions here. But then again, you're hurting other dogs at our shelter if they don't come pick it up. So it's like a tug back and forth. You're like, you need to do this, and we need to make you understand you need to do what you're supposed to. But then on the back end, like, because we've had somebody who, they at one point owed the shelter probably a couple $100, $200 or $300, just in fees that built up. And they're like, I can't come pick up my dog. I don't have the money.
Oh,
And we're like, okay, we need the space, like, we'll work
Right.
with you. And then the dog ended up in our shelter again. And then the fees started accruing again, and we're like, what do you do? Like, you don't want to
Yeah,
make
it's a
this-
problem.
Yeah, they got bills to pay. They're gonna give us all their money to the shelter. So it's tough.
Yeah.
And it kind of pulls at your heart a little bit, where there's certain people who mean well. Then there's other people, like the husky person, who he did not. That
Yeah.
was a totally different person.
And then, like, my thing is, when I used to walk my dogs a lot until I had a baby. Now I push the baby, but it is kind of scary. I mean, I have several dogs, and you're walking on the sidewalk, and this dog can come over, and my dog will fight. So I need you to keep your dog over there so that I can walk my dog, because we have nice sidewalks, and I want to walk them, but I can't risk that, my dog getting in a fight, you know. But I think that was our concern is, you know, our other woman, she had a same thing, a dog. She was getting out of her house, and the neighbor's dog is like she had to hide in her car. So I just, you know, it sounds like there's a potential for us to have the leash law in town. I mean,
So, like, I've actually spoken with Puckett earlier and everything, and this is kind of, I had actually sent the questions to Emily. Were you able to get the notes for all the questions?
Yeah, I think, I don't think I had the email, but I answered them for what they
Okay,
were.
cool.
I could try to give you my best
All
answer
right,
for them.
so Alicia's coming up in my studies to figure out the whole entire leash law situation. I think that was covered in 3.26539. Sorry, dash 6539. So I'm guessing the first question, just based on Emily's report and everything, if enacting this ordinance, would the town do so in accordance with Code 3.2-6538? And upon adoption of said ordinance, all penalties incurred by the town residents would be paid to the town treasurer, or would that be paid to county if we were to adopt this type of code?
Town treasurer.
Okay. So that'd be like just within the scope if that was like a residential owner, that'd be to them, correct?
Yeah, the only thing, because I was reading through the code after I was looking at the email,
Uh-huh.
some of the wording in 6538, I'd have to ask the county attorney, because where it says, like, such ordinance shall provide that the owner or custodian of any dog found running at large in pact shall be subject to civil penalty. So it mentions where the dog is deemed running at large in a pack. And I mean, more often than not, the dogs can be running by
Yeah, just in
itself.
one, yeah.
Yeah.
So there was some wording there we may have to revise or something when it comes to a county, because
yeah, that's like hunting dogs. And I don't think that's what we're concerned about. We
Yeah.
just want to keep the town, like you want to be able to go downtown and eat, and a
Yeah.
stray dog.
Yeah.
And my thing is just, you can't have the habitual dogs, just the same people, reckless ownership, that kind of.
And the county is adamant they do not want a leash law. So this would
Oh, I-
only be for the town.
I
Oh,
know.
absolutely
Little
not.
dog,
You can't offend them dog hunters.
So there's actually
Don't get me
something-
started on that.
I could show you guys all either individual, I don't have it with me, there's something for the county, I'm working with the county attorney, that's gonna make a lot of people upset. I don't know if it'll ever get passed, but it's a very good idea that a local, or a jurisdiction next to us, Campbell County, I got the paperwork from them, the county attorney has seen it and says it's possible, but of course the board's gonna have to push it through.
Yeah.
It's gonna ruffle a lot of feathers, but it's just another way that it gives us, and it shouldn't, I've talked to hunters, and what this paper is should not bother them, because it won't necessarily, like, a lot of the hunters always say, well, what about the pit bulls and the Rottweilers? And yes, that is true, like, a lot of our biggest issues isn't hunting dogs, like, they do fill up our shelter probably, the majority of the breeds we bring in is hound dogs, for various reasons, but it's not like I'm targeting them, but if we can make something that kind of covers a broad scope, it's a trespass notice, I feel like it's necessary, it's not anything we're talking about tonight, so I'm not trying to just get too off topic, but just to kind of get it maybe in your guys' heads to think about it.
Yeah.
If you talk to anybody else, it would be like, if you live at, 123 Main Street, and at 122 Main Street, they have a dog that comes over and tears up your flowers, rips your Christmas lights off, which around Christmas we get a lot of those calls, like, they tore up all my Christmas lights. It would be like, the first time I'd go there and say, hey, like, this is a verbal warning, your dog is not to go back on Miss Allen's property. The second time, you provided me like a photograph, timestamps, like, it happened again after you talked to them. The second time we could bring up the notice, or bring the trespass notice, serve it to them. Don't, like, the next time you'll be fined. The third time, again, you'd have to prove with timestamps and stuff, we'd have to make sure that they were, correlating with the days after, and then the third time they'd be fine.
Yeah.
And we bring them in. I don't know, I think this was $100 fine. I'd have to
Mhm.
check. I think
Yeah, yeah, it is.
this is 100, yeah, so, which could be good. I mean, if you let your dog run around do God knows what in the town, $100 might make you think like, oh, I
Right.
don't want to do that. The trespass notice is probably should be close to that. Nothing too crazy, but just enough to be like, hey, okay. I mean, there's a stretch of houses that I know if that got enacted, they would be like, I need one, I need one, I need one, because it's just so
Yeah.
prevalent in that area.
So in the meantime, I guess my question is, I've called and I've said, hey, I've got this dog, it's here hanging out, you know, I've been told, just let the dog hang out, let the dog, because there's no room, or we can't pick it up, and use the Facebook page the best you can to kind of get the dog out. Is that kind of what the deal is now?
So-
Or, because if we're not gonna have the leash, like, how can we make this work for everybody, like, so we don't have the dogs roaming around? The leash law would help that, because somebody have to take ownership of it.
And would
Yeah.
just a generic awareness be something we could send out that would be helpful?
Yeah, we could probably, even on our page, be a little bit more proactive of just not only posting dogs we have in the shelter, but like just general knowledge, and which we try to do that when it gets cold out, you know, like the whole 32
Yeah.
under and 85 and up. We try, and we get a lot of calls for things like that. Yeah, I guess if there was an enacted leash law and it came, really, there's no dogs to be running at large within the town then.
Yeah.
So we would come pick them up, you know, as long as the dog's still there. It might fill up the shelter more. And of course, with filling up the shelter comes like the dreaded thing that most people think it's like the worst thing ever, which is
Yeah.
true, you know, it's an unfortunate side to it if you can't move dogs. I think with the size of the shelter, the citizens' need is outweighs really the limits of what the shelter can do.
Hmm.
It just really does. Like right now, like I said, we have 20 runs, and we really can only use 19 of those, because one is those puppies we were talking about. We're
Uh-huh.
having to like switch the mom and I mean, they're cute, but they make a mess.
Yeah.
So we're down like a run, and then you have a lot of calls coming in, like owner surrenders, strays. Like I picked up 5 dogs right at the end of the day today at the same spot. So it might overwhelm the shelter a little bit, and if we can move dogs, we can. If we can't, we can't. But you probably would see, I think the streets and everything would look a little bit better. Like you shouldn't see a dog running down
Right.
the street when you're going into court. It's kind of strange. I think it would be good. Another thing I wanted to get with the pros, there is another house on High Street, which is not far. Like another thing that would help, the man that lives in one of these houses is an amputee. So he leaves his leg on the front porch sometimes. I mean, it's not my reason to ask why, but one of the neighbor's dogs has taken it and ran away with it. And because the dog stays outside a little. So it just makes the situation again where like, there's no particular charge I can do for that. I have to go to that person and be like, hey, your dog is not watched outside.
Right.
It is really causing a problem for your neighbor. Stuff like that, I fit into that pros. I really can't see too many cons for it though.
So you would be supportive if the town decides, hey, we want a leash law?
Oh, 100% for me.
And it sounds like altogether at the shelter, there's issues. So maybe if we can find some people and raise some money, maybe we can get another run or two. Like maybe it'll help a chain, maybe it'll
Yeah.
all,
One of the things that our shelter would benefit a lot of is we really need to try to find is not a humane society, but just like some kind of rescue that would really directly work with us. We have a lot that we reach out to, but you just never know, like, it could be a random day and somebody calls you like, hey, I'll take a couple dogs. You're like, thank God. But it's not like we have somebody boots on the ground every day.
Yeah.
It's actually us trying to facilitate it. So if we're going out picking up more dogs, it's just, we're gonna fill up more.
So, Rob, I guess we need to study this some more and see where we're gonna go with it.
Yeah, I think the issue at hand is, you've had a couple concerns brought up. Their hands are tied because we don't have an ordinance, so they can't come in town and really assist us.
So
So
we
we
need
need
to-
to look at seeing whether this is something we want to pursue.
Or change our ordinance, or
Yeah,
word
We'd
it.
have to create one and work through with the town attorney and bring it back for adoption and public hearings.
Or maybe the dog lovers might just want a friendly reminder sent out with the next water bill,
Yeah.
saying, hey,
We can do something like that. So I think you've heard what we need to do, and you can decide at a later, but if you want staff to initiate get some additional information on what an ordinance would look like. We'd certainly work with animal control to make sure it's drafted and something they could live with, and it actually get official to everybody. So
Yeah, I think we need to
Okay.
definitely
Yeah.
research the benefits
All right.
and how it's gonna affect the town.
We'll
So,
do
I guess,
Also, I just have 2 more questions just to kind of like clarify my thoughts, because I know that, at least Virginia Code 3.26539, the one literally right after that, that one is the dog leash one, but that one has a referendum type situation to it, so we would have to figure that one out. The 2 questions that I just wanted to have and everything, upon finding these dogs, do we ever enforce dog/cat like licenses and everything? Because I know that's a part of the county situation. How are we doing with like education with that? Because I know that typically helps with identifying dogs who are lost.
Yeah, so first thing, when we take a dog and we microchip scan it, most of the time we don't get anything, but then the Facebook page is our main resource. When somebody does come forward, I could tell you, like, if I go out and talk to 100 people, 90 of them are not gonna know what a county tag is, so we're trying to explain. And then when it comes to people that have, like 5 or 6 dogs, they don't know about kennel tags. They can do, so we do a lot of that, and then when we talk with people with potential rabies exposures, we always do rabies and county tags kind of, they just go hand in hand, so we'll always ask those two. We do keep a log book, like if somebody doesn't come to the shelter, we don't bring a dog in, but they say, hey, I lost, a yellow lab at this point, or wherever it is, we'll log it in a book, so then if somebody finds it, then we can try to call them. That doesn't quite work as much as we'd like. Facebook really is our best asset right now.
Gotcha. And so just like last question, because I noticed this when I was actually looking at the animal control site. We do have a feral cat population type like situation. I think a lot of places do and everything. The more you have people, the more that, cats are gonna get out and everything, and they tend to mate a lot. What are we currently doing with that program? Is there any TNR happening? And is that having like a funding issue?
Yeah, so we don't have an actual affiliated TNR program.
Okay.
We have certain ones that I could tell you I've referred people to, and they call me back and they're like, they told me to kick rocks, they're too busy.
Gotcha.
And I'm like, okay. So even just the other day, I went to a guy's house, there was cat traps everywhere. And he said there was a lady from Tennessee who does that stuff, who's trapping cats, neutering them, and releasing them back on his property. So you're getting people who are trying to get involved, but they're not really with us.
Yeah.
As far as we go, if somebody says they have a cat problem, we lend them traps, and then we don't have a budget set yet. We're trying to figure that out. We have a few different means that we've been told to try to get funds, but we want to get to a point where, like, if you have a cat that you need trapped, I could say, I'll give you the trap it, take it to the spay neuter clinic. We'll pay the bill with this funds, but then you have to release it on the property.
That would be
Or-
wonderful.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we're trying to do that. That's actually a pretty easy goal, I think, if we can get the funds. Because most people honestly don't mind. If they don't have to pay, they don't mind.
A
bringing
cat
it
hanging
back.
around, yeah,
Mhm.
most
So
people.
we'll do it. There is some TNR program, I think Southside has somebody, but every time I refer them,
Gotcha.
they're just so busy, but we don't have anything set through our shelter right now.
And as far as the dogs go, when a person has a complaint, do they call the 911 emergency line to, who do they reach out to?
Yeah, it really just depends. One thing we've tried to stress to as many people as we can is the shelter gets called a lot. 911 is good, like if it's a dog attack or something like that, we get a lot that way, but it's typically through the non-emergency number.
And then what responsibility, I'm just asking questions. What responsibility would the sheriff's deputies have if, is it you that will come or your staff will come to the, and is that, are we looking at like 2 days later or that day, or I'm just,
Yeah, it's
because I know you're busy.
It's
So
just
would you get a
call dependent.
deputy to do a response, or how's that working?
There's one thing which is not in the town. There's an outside location that we have a note that a deputy will respond, because I'm not sure if everybody knows, there's like a wolf sanctuary that's moved into the county.
Yeah.
No, I did not know
That is the
that.
only place that a deputy will go in place of us right away because of the scenario there. But other than that, typically, like, the deputies will get involved if there's a dog that's been shot. Depending on the circumstances, they might go, but we'll respond. We do after-hours emergencies,
Okay.
which happens pretty frequently recently. It's just unfortunate, but we've had dogs get shot for whatever reason, and we'll go out there and investigate it. The deputies don't really get involved unless there's a person kind of problem that we need help addressing. If we go there and the people are making crazy statements,
Belligerent,
stuff like that, they'll be there to.
threatening.
Yeah, they'll be there for us, but it's really us that respond.
All right, I guess we'll move on. We'll have
Thank
further
you.
discussion on all this.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
In our audience tonight, I'm glad to have the Boy Scouts. You want to identify y'all's group? What are y'all?
We're Troop BA 1709,
All right.
Liberty Baptist.
Okay, well, welcome to the town council meeting.
Thank you.
All right. I guess our next topic is consideration to adopt a property maintenance code, but I guess we got a guest speaker, I guess, Jeff Brown is gonna speak to us on that. Rob, you on that?
Yeah, there's been some interest in the town creating a property maintenance ordinance, and I think it would be a good idea to have Mr. Brown explain the pros, the cons, and the process, because it's gonna be pretty detailed. So I requested that he come and give you a presentation on what all would be involved.
All right, we welcome you.
Appreciate him
Yeah.
showing up.
Good evening. Thank you for the invite, and glad to be here this evening. Hopefully I can give you all some information, but hopefully not too much information. I know I put together a PowerPoint. It is a little lengthy, so I'm not going to go through the entire thing. It would take a little bit too long, but we will kind of skim through it. What I hope to do is kind of give you the basics on, what the property maintenance code is, what it takes to choose to enforce it, set up a maintenance department, things like that, and then I'd be glad to answer any questions that you all might have. And feel free to stop me during the presentation if you have a question. But again, I'm really here for you, so whatever information you need, if I leave it out, just ask me and I'll be glad to give it to you. So a little background on me, I'm with the Department of Housing, Community Development out of Richmond. I work for the state, and I'm in the state building codes office. So generally what I do is work on development and adoption of the statewide building and fire codes. I do have some experience at the local level enforcing the maintenance code, so I should be able to give you some insights. Obviously, I can't give you a recommendation on what you should do, but I can tell you what some of my experiences were and hopefully answer some questions. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. We can go ahead and jump to the next slide. All right, so right now we're in the 2021 edition of the building code, and again, we'll just skip right over this one. It just kind of tells you what edition we're in. And the property maintenance code, or the Virginia property maintenance code, is part of the building code. It's got three parts. The first part is for construction. The second part is for rehabbing existing buildings, and part three, the maintenance code, is for maintenance of existing structures. You can jump to the next one. Again, we can skip this one, I believe. So why do we have a maintenance code? Again, like I said, this gives the localities an opportunity to have a standardized set of regulations if they choose to enforce them, to deal with maintenance of existing buildings. There really is no other means to address these types of buildings through enforcement mechanisms. Other than a couple of the tools that we'll talk about as I get near the end, some other state statutes and local ordinances you can adopt related to some blight and things like that. So you can go ahead and next slide, please. So the purpose of the code, and these are some sections right out of the maintenance code, and again, you should have all this information, so I'm not going to read it word for word, but feel free to stop me if I skip over something that you think is important. Again, the purpose is to ensure health and safety of the citizens. We can jump to the next section. And it's laid out in there. A lot of this is just copied straight from state law, but really the maintenance code is something that, again, is able to be adopted. Well, I shouldn't really say adopted because it is adopted statewide, but you can choose locally to enforce it. And the exemptions are basically the same thing as the building code. So if there's a structure that's not regulated by the building code, like a farm building or something like that, it would not be regulated, again, by the maintenance code. Next slide, please. We won't really go into the details of these. These are, again, just some kind of details about how the code is applied and things like that. These are really general in nature, so we can skip this one. We won't go into rental inspections either. The information's there. If that's something that you really wanted to do, that's kind of a whole separate ball game. You can adopt a rental inspection district and set up an ordinance for that if you have a lot of rental properties, and that's something where you actually set up an area of the locality that you're going to focus on and do your rental inspections. Next slide, please. So here's getting into kind of the meat and potatoes of it. So basically, the building code for new buildings is required to be enforced by every jurisdiction. And so a smaller jurisdiction, like maybe a town, maybe it's set up this way where the county does the enforcement of the building code. As long as somebody is doing it, the town or jurisdiction themselves, or they're partnering with somebody else. Now the maintenance code, where it's different, is you can choose to enforce it. You don't have to enforce it. There are a couple of instances where you do have to enforce the maintenance code, and this would be done by the building official. So if the county is doing the building code enforcement in the town, they are required to enforce the maintenance code when there is a tenant complaint of an unsafe structure, or for elevator inspections, which there may not be a lot of elevators in the jurisdiction, but those are really the couple of instances where it is already mandatory regardless of what the locality chooses to do. And again, we underline this at the bottom. This is, you can kind of choose how you want to enforce the code. Now, once you've chosen to enforce it, it is on the books, but the level of enforcement you could kind of tweak for whatever suits you best. So some jurisdictions are proactive, where they actually go out daily. They've got inspectors that go out looking for issues and writing up violations. But you can do what is called kind of more proactive enforcement, where if you get a complaint or you know of something that appears to be a violation, you can follow up on it. I always just recommend that however you choose to do it, you always want to be consistent with it. You can't just really pick and choose. I want to enforce on this property, but not the neighboring property.
Right.
You know, so if I got a complaint, if I was an inspector and somebody said this house is falling apart, I want you to come out and look at it. I would drive up, I would look at the house and do my inspection and write up any violations. However, if the house next to it is plainly got violations, I can't just walk away and act like I didn't see it. I'm gonna write that one up too. I'm not out looking for it, but if I'm there and see it, you know, I'm gonna, you know, write it up and treat it just like any other property. Next slide. Enforcement, again, this is just laying out that you have to enforce it if you have a tenant complaint. Again, that's going to be an unsafe situation, so just because it's peeling paint or something like that, that may not apply. Code official would have to do an inspection to determine that it was unsafe, and then they can enforce the maintenance code. That's if you have not adopted or chosen to enforce it. We can go ahead to the next slide. I've included it and I sent out, and so you should have a copy of our model ordinances. This kind of gives you an idea of what it would look like if a locality chose to enforce the maintenance code. So it's not really done by adopting the code. What you would do is say, okay, we have chosen to enforce it. So you would adopt an ordinance or pass an ordinance that basically says we have chosen to enforce the maintenance code. Here's who's going to be our enforcing agent. And outline some of the details of how you plan to implement the maintenance code in the jurisdiction. And there's different ones in there that lay out different ways you might do that if you want to do it fully, or if you want to maybe do just unsafe structures or something like that. You could pick and choose from that. Again, that's not word for word how it has to be done, but just some examples that we like to provide to give you
Do most
an
people just
idea.
have one, or do they do a mix
Yeah,
of all of these?
most people would just pick one approach. Most people, when they, from my experience, if they choose to enforce it, they choose to enforce the entire code. But the level of enforcement may vary. You know, it's more of a policy at that point on how you enforce it, whether you do it proactive or reactive or what have you. But most jurisdictions just choose to enforce it, choose appoint a code official and go forward like that. Okay, so we go to the next slide, please. So again, if you do choose to enforce the maintenance code, you do have to have a local agency designated for the enforcement of it. And that local agency also has to have an appointed local official that's in charge of enforcing the maintenance code. Once that person is appointed, DHCD has to be notified. We keep a record of that. That's important because that person is authorized to enforce and interpret the code. And if they are challenged by that, there's an appeals process and things like that. So there has to be one individual. They do have certain qualifications and stuff that they have to have. And if we go to the next slide, I think we'll talk about that. As you can see, they need some experience, 5 years of experience. And it lists out some other things in the code as well about what kind of knowledge that they need to have. We can go to the next one. And then they have 1 year to get certified if they're not already certified when they're hired. And so that requires a couple of classes and passing an exam. And then a technical assistant will be somebody that will be hired to assist the code official, the appointed code official. And they have 18 months to get their inspector certification. Next slide. All right, so again, once you get a complaint, or if you're riding down the road and saw something, the code official has the authority to conduct inspections to determine compliance. Of course, they have to comply with trespass laws and things like that too, and so they get training on how to do that. And they can also, again, hire inspectors to help them as technical assistants, or use third parties in some cases if they need to, if there's something complex that they need to investigate, like a structural issue or something like that. If they want to deem something unsafe because it looks like it's going to collapse, they may hire a third-party engineer to write up a report, and they can use that as well. Next slide, please. So a violation of the maintenance code is a misdemeanor offense, and of course, you can read more about that in the Code of Virginia, and we'll talk kind of a little bit more later on in this section about how that is addressed, either through the courts or through civil penalties. Next slide, please. All right, so obviously if you see a violation, there's specific details in the code on how you have to write that up through official notices, reports, correction notices, notice of violations, and all of that is detailed in the code. Next slide. And then, obviously, the next step, if you cannot get compliance, could be going to court. And that seems to happen a lot with the maintenance code, a lot more than you have with the building code and those sort of things. And typically, whoever's enforcing the maintenance code, they're going to work really closely with the local attorney on all those cases. When I was a maintenance official, I would go over all the cases with the attorney. He would really do a lot of the court part for me. We would go to court together. He would present the cases. I'd be there as kind of like a witness to answer questions, and we would work through it that way. In some instances, you can basically deputize your code official if you want them to issue their own warrant or summons. If not, they would just go to the magistrate if they need to issue a summons, and that's how most, in my experience, especially if you're not in a big city where you're doing hundreds and hundreds of cases, most of them just use the local magistrate. And again, there's penalties can be assessed. Most jurisdictions, from my experience, do not assess civil penalties. They use the criminal process, so really it's just, you go out, you try to get abatement. If you can't get that, you go to court, and then the court can always impose fines and things like that. Some jurisdictions do adopt a schedule of local penalties, which they set up locally, where you could fine somebody, but in general, the idea is typically to try to get compliance, and sometimes just getting a $50 fine or $25 fine, it's not really gonna change anything. It may help offset some of the cost of the enforcement, but again, that's one more thing you have to track. So I think a lot of people just really try to use what they have, and get the best best compliance they can, and then use the courts if all else fails. Next slide. Again, this is just a little more on that. There are opportunities in there if you can't get compliance outside of court. There are opportunities for things like doing repairs, making repairs on properties, using your own forces, or tearing down a property if it came to that. There's also some other local ordinances that can be adopted related to blighted properties that, in my opinion, are sometimes easier to use if you're dealing with properties that may need demolition, that have been abandoned and vacant for years, and it's hard to get a hold of the owners of the property. It's probably going to be hard to reach demolition or something like that through the maintenance code. So a lot of jurisdictions will use other local ordinances for blight and unsafe buildings, along with the maintenance code in conjunction, and work through that using a variety of tools. Next slide, please. And one other piece is the appeals process, like we talked about before. If you're going to write up somebody on a violation, they have a due process where they can dispute that decision, or if they feel like they're aggrieved by that decision, they can first go to what's called a local board of appeals. So if you appoint a code official and choose to enforce the code, you also have to set up your local board of appeals. Some people use regional boards and things like that, so there may be one locally that's already doing building code appeals, maybe for the county or something, that you could partner with if you went that route, and use them in the case that you had an appeal. As long as you have a board that's set up and ready to hear an appeal, if you were to get one, you'd be good to go. Next slide. And we won't go through all the details of that. It gets kind of nuanced in here about how to set up that board, so we can skip this one and go on to the next one. And skip this slide. So again, there is a 14-day window for somebody to appeal, so it's not something that's just open-ended. If they don't appeal during that 14 days, then the right of appeal is gone, and that code official's decision stands. Next slide. Next one. Next one. And then ultimately, once that decision is made by the local board, either party, whether it be the code official or the property owner, whoever might be appealing, if they don't agree with that decision of the local board, they can further appeal to the state review board, and it's just another appeal hearing that's had. And the result of those hearings is those boards will either uphold the decision of the code official or overturn it. Sometimes if it gets to the state board, they will return it back to the local board to have them work with the individuals if the hearing needs to continue at the local level. Next slide. And we won't go through these. You can skip on through these chapters. This is just kind of highlighting what's covered in each of the chapters. This slide is talking about some of the other tools, and this is one of the most important ones, and I handed out another list that lists out local ordinances you can adopt. What I was talking about a minute ago is one of those related to unsafe buildings, and a lot of jurisdictions already have this one on the books. Sometimes you may not even know it, but it's buried in there somewhere, and it's just a small section that talks about unsafe buildings. If you have that, from my experience, that one's a lot easier to use on an unsafe building. Again, that's somebody's really hard to get a hold of, and you really need to do something with that. With the maintenance code, you have to have proper notice and that sort of thing, so sometimes you can't even, they're out of state, you have to get out of state sheriff to try to serve them a summons to get to court, and if they can't find them, you can't get to court, and your hands are kind of tied, and you can't really do a whole lot. But some of those local ordinances for unsafe buildings, they are a little bit different in how they're set up. You don't actually have to have a code official in place. Somebody at the locality can handle that. And then the notices are done through like the newspaper and things like that. And then you can take action and do some cleanup that way. So again, some people, even if they do have the maintenance code, would still use those unsafe building local ordinances that are authorized through state statute. So again, and that handout I gave you is fairly old. It's many years old. Most of those are probably still on the books, but you know, that'll kind of point you in the right direction, the code sections in the Code of Virginia. There may be some slight changes to those over the years, or they may have added some, but you might want to take a look at that as well. Next slide, please. And this is just a link. You can go on and you can actually take a look at the full Virginia Maintenance Code. If you go to that link and pull up the 2021 Virginia Property Maintenance Code, I will give you a heads up. If you try to do it on a cell phone, it's probably not going to work. It's going to try to send you to the store like you have to buy the book. It is a free view that you can look at, but you need to do it from like a laptop or a desktop computer to make sure it works.
How often do they update those?
Yeah, so it's about every 3 years, yep, and we just went to the 21 codes, actually last July 18th. And so really there's a 1-year grace period, so for the building code, most people are just now starting to use the 2021 codes, and we're getting ready to start looking at adopting the 2024 edition, but that's about a 2-year process. So it'll probably be 2027 before we actually have the next edition of the maintenance code and the other codes adopted at the state level. And next slide. And I think I got through that pretty quick, so I hope I didn't take up too much time. But again, all of the information is there. You'll have all my kind of notes that I might have skipped over, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
I do have 4 questions. Sorry, I was actually able to find this earlier when we got the original agenda. So, and going through 101 all the way through 107, kind of really brought up some questions. So, for the 2021 Virginia Property Maintenance Code, does it need to be adopted in its entirety? I know that the first part has to be because you have to follow those rules, but between chapters 3 through 7, like let's just say, could we ignore chapter 6 if we want, or does it have to be fully all the way through?
Yeah, so very good question. And again, I'm not an attorney, so I can tell you what our kind of interpretation is on it, but I'll definitely say you would want, your local attorney would be the best one to give you a final answer on. But we have always interpreted the state law, since it says a locality may enforce, that they can choose if they want to enforce in whole or in part. Again, like you said, the administrative requirements in chapter 1, that kind of sets up how to do it, so it would be that. But one example would be, I think there's a couple jurisdictions that might only do the unsafe structure provisions, and so you would probably just want to include that in your local ordinance when you adopted it, if that's how you chose to proceed.
All right. I'm good.
All right.
Sorry. I know if it
We'll
must.
have further discussion on all this, so.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
So Rob, I'd like to, for the council anyway, both of these topics, the leash law and the property maintenance, I'd like to see what all we got on the books, if we could get something printed up and give it to all the council so we can study it a little bit.
I will give you a little bit of background. When this initially got started in conversation, we did work with the town attorney. I do have some mods that he did that I talked to Mr. Brown, he's willing for us to send them to him, to make sure what we've come up with might actually work, and once we get that, we can bring it back and distribute it for council to review it for another date.
It'd be helpful. Mr. Brown, we appreciate your information, and I'm sure we'll be contacting you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you
Thanks,
so
sir,
much.
appreciate it.
I'll now turn the meeting back over to Mr. Connor, Mayor Connor.
Thank you, sir. All right. We already,
Yeah. Dave, you want to speak?
okay, we'll go ahead and, this time, we'll let y'all come and make your presentations if y'all are ready, or is there a presentation to make, or it's,
No.
They're
Okay.
here
They're just here to
to
observe.
observe.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're actually with Trail Life, we're just here to observe your proceedings here.
It's a good experience.
Number one, try to be prompt and remember when the meeting is. I'm sorry, it has been a busy week so far,
Oh, really?
and we haven't got to the middle of it yet.
One question for that. Is there, I know like with the scouts, whenever we would go out to like the Capitol or up to the nation's capital, we could earn merit badges by doing so. Citizenship of the nation, citizenship of the world. Does Trail Life have something?
Absolutely, we're actually working on our citizenship badge.
Oh, okay.
That's great. And it's so vitally important to teach our kids, our children, civics. I mean, it's a subject that is, only a few people are interested in, but it's fascinating, and I'm so glad you're here to observe us. I think civics is a wonderful.
And you say you're with Liberty?
We're out of Liberty Baptist, yes, sir.
I'm gonna have to ask my grandson why he won't here tonight.
Uh-oh.
He's clearly not after the badge.
Evidently.
Well, I guess, do you guys have questions for us? Is that allowed? If y'all are here to earn a badge or work on anything, is there anything you have questions for us?
Do you guys have any questions? What's the process to get up here and talk about the different subjects? What's the process to come and present?
Basically, we
show
allow,
up.
The same question.
basically, we allow any citizen, town, county, doesn't matter, to come and speak. We'll give them 3 minutes. You come in, you'll sign up to speak,
That table, white table
and
sitting
then we
there
will
has a sign-up sheet.
get to that point in our process. We will ask for the public's comments on anything in general, anything specifically we're working on for a given session. And then you get up there and you make your presentation, be prompt, precise, and to the point. Get your point across quickly. You've got 3 minutes. It can be cumbersome to do that. As you see, I tend to talk on, so, as do other members, other boards and councils throughout the communities.
The speakers we had here tonight, they normally get with us within a week prior to, and then they'll send us their handouts through email and the PowerPoints and so forth, so that we can have them ready for the meeting.
And of course, for the presentations, and as you noticed, they had longer than 3 minutes because they came, their special discussion items and explanations, they have longer. But we would just love to see younger people get involved in local government. It's so necessary. So necessary, either by working for the local government. These gentlemen over here are employees, and we're elected officials, and Cindy is an employee. So either way, it's very beneficial.
I'll tell you, this is a group to, really work with and everything. And I'll tell you, just from being down there and even up here, down there, I was scared to talk. Up here, I'm still scared to talk. It's just one of those things and everything. So I always encourage people to just have confidence, say what you need to say, even if you make a mistake, and just try to do yourself proud and do your community proud.
Moving right along, we're going to add an item to the discussion items. Timmy has brought forward a proposal for the town. It's in your packages. Proposal that we provide series of programs for television that will educate, inform, and highlight the improvements and changes that is occurring in Appomattox to benefit the community. The programs will be used not only to inform the residents, but could also provide attraction for potential visitors, residents, and business growth. So
basically, we've done this before with some other topics, but Mr. Duck has given us a proposal to cover the new town manager we have, getting the community to know, learn him, do a little segment on that, do one on recent renovations at the high school. We directly don't have a whole lot to do with the high school, but it does promote, it's in town, and it does promote businesses to come in, and that's why we kind of tied that in to do a segment. We got to make sure the schools, hadn't talked to the superintendent yet to get approval, but, and then the fire, EMS, and the sheriff will be doing one presentation, but it would involve all three, show how the town has complimented those services that they're providing for the town. And infrastructure's updates, the water lines we're doing, the lead grant stuff we're doing, and they kind of highlight a whole lot of that to educate the town citizens of what we got going on. And another topic we did a little bit on a previous show was interior and exterior renovation of the depot, kind of highlight on some of that. And that's what we're looking at. And Mr. Duck, you want to add anything to that?
Not really, Tim. We just see it. We had done this a while back, and we used council members, excuse me, that did an excellent job, but we want to step it up and make it a little bit more professional with professional interviewer, which we have one on our group that works with us, and to make it a 30-minute program that will highlight what's happening in this town, not just for the residents here. I think that's important to keep your people educated, but also to provide information for potential residents, because you're listed as one of the highest growing areas in the state. Additionally, potentiality of businesses that you would like to have come in here, where they see growth and where they see that you are making strides to work with businesses, and the increased improvements that you've placed within the town, from infrastructure to education to every facet in every area. It becomes then vital. It's great for just people in this community to know about, but you're robbing yourself of potential that could reach beyond your borders of Appomattox. So it's simply a proposal. It's your decision. But I think it could have value, and it would go, of course, on television. We're reaching about 120,000 homes, and we're also reaching other areas beyond Virginia. We additionally, would help you to put it on your YouTube and also on your Facebook. Use every media source that you've got to advertise yourself. It works. And what I do, it works. I know, because I've got a proven product that it works. That the more you put yourself out there, the more that you're going to grow. So, if you have any questions.
Kim, do you know where we could pull this money from? It's already,
As I was listening, I was considering it under, possibly not knowing what we have remaining, but under, if it's also on our website, I might be able to put it under that type of expense, website development, website costs. I'm thinking toward the marketing side, so I can't verify. I don't know what our plans.
so if we make a motion and approve it, it's something we could make
It's there
happen?
now in the budget, but I can't remember if you had anything major coming through for those. So I can explore that to see if I can get it under that budget line. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
If council would like to approve or deny this, the money is there.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to proceed with these and Mr. Duck will work with our new town manager, and Rob also be in that picture, and any of the council members wants to have an input into it also, to proceed with this $3,500 for these topics, to get our word out and educate the public.
So I will second that motion.
Motion made and properly seconded to fund the proposed programs at a cost of $3,500. Any further discussion? All right. By roll call vote, Ms. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes.
Mr. Boyce,
Yes.
Mr. Cardwell,
Yes.
Ms. Spiegel.
Yes.
By a vote of 5-0, motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, I have just a second, since we're training tonight. The reason we asked our accounts clerk to look at where the money could come from, because we have a budget that we approved for the whole year. And if we don't have money appropriated for things, we can't spend it. We have to do a whole new, publicly advertise it and we have to approve a different budget than what we had already previously approved, so it's a process. You can't just come in just because you've got a checkbook and all this money, you can't just go. So it's a process. I'm just sharing that with y'all. Sorry, man.
You don't take it out of your mortgage because you still got to pay your mortgage. You don't take it out of your car payments because you still got to drive to work. So you've got to
Thank you, Mr.
see if it's
Dodd.
in your budget.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Reverend Duck. All righty. And next, on the council standing committee reports, finance and planning.
Nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Boyce. Physical development.
I have an update on the depot. We have completed the primary paint job on the inside of the second half. We're still waiting on some plumbing for it to get warmer. We can't put water in to some of those pipes right now. But anyway, we do have some touch-up paint where the plumbing is that we gotta take out that we're gonna redo. But the paint job has been done inside. And if any of y'all wanna go down, we can get with me or the town manager, we can go down and look at it. But it turned out real good, I think. But that's the only update I have.
Ready.
We're under budget too on that.
And we thank you for
Excellent.
taking on that task of getting
Yes,
that
sir.
done.
That's nice.
All right. All right, move along to staff reports. Madam Treasurer.
I'm going to give you just kind of an overview because I don't think there's any need for me to read to you, but wanted to mention the three funds of the general fund, the water fund, and the sewer fund. The general fund and the sewer fund are definitely in the black, like we always expect, and that's normal. The water fund, which we know is always running close, it's a little down because we've had some transitioning in our employment. We've reclassed people, we've changed a little bit in our organization, so that is a negative 35.9 right now, and I think that's what's pulling that more so. We're in transition too, so not knowing exactly how we're gonna kind of play that out and how we're gonna settle into that. I would not propose a budget amendment yet until we know where we're heading. Till I know where y'all heading. So, yeah, so we're gonna stay tuned for that. So we will be coming back to visit that. So that's just one of the things I wanted to bring to your attention and to remind you that we're 50% into our year. So our overall look like our revenue, we predicted pretty good. We're running like 52% in revenue, again, the water's a little higher than our 50% on the expense side. So that's what's running us a little negative in there. But overall, no really big surprises that I've seen so far. But I did want to bring your attention to the other financial matters to let you know that you should have a budget calendar.
Yeah.
We're going into budget season. Please be mindful of those dates that we plan to have budget meetings so that you can prepare yourselves accordingly so we can start working on the fiscal year 26 budget. I think it takes you from the activity, I think the council becomes involved from March until May. I think that we'll be working on budget. And in addition to that, the W-2s are out, so please check if you need to in the boxes. The 1099s for all our vendors went out. That was another year-end requirement. And we have some grant statements that we have to send out each year too. Those are gone out. As far as budget amendment information, we will have some lines that we may need to readdress. We have one of our grant projects winding down. I don't know yet where we're gonna fall, so I don't wanna propose the budget amount quite yet, because we're so close to finishing the Church Street water line. So I'm waiting to get maybe a final number of how much we may need. We have some carryovers. We use some outside contractors during this transition. And again, I've already talked about some of the employment decisions that we may want to talk about or change or address. But that's all I have for the financial report, if you don't have any questions. Okay.
No, I'll just add that the good news is, as you've seen here, 36 on the red on the water fund. And of course, I'm a firm believer that every enterprise fund should fund itself. But we're 80 in the black in the sewer fund, and our personnel, equipment, the things that we use in the town to complete those operations, they overlap. So nothing really to worry about there at this point. And then I would also add that, yes, I would absolutely expect we're going to try to keep our budget amendments to a minimum. But we know we're going to have one, and we probably will have two. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay. Well, sounds very good.
Thank you, ma'am. Ready. And now, I'd like to officially welcome Mr. Michael Campbell as our new town manager. He started with us yesterday. Took him on the grand tour of Appomattox, the town of Appomattox, not the county.
I got the mayoral tour. It's very
That's the
good.
same one Gary gave me, so, one of our previous town managers.
I appreciate it.
But I probably need to do one with all the folks we have on our staff, so they can show me where everything is. I can show, well, hopefully we won't have to show nobody for a while. Anyway, so, Mr. Campbell, with that, this is your time to present the town manager's report, and if you need to defer to Rob because he's been doing the job all month so far, please feel free.
Well, I'd be happy to let Rob do it. I would like you to know before, and if you don't mind, I would like have you give the well report from them. But I just wanted to let you know that I've already started meeting with staff. I spent a couple hours today with the Public Works and Utility staff. And so it is day 2, but we're already making progress. And I am fairly up to speed on where we're at on most of the projects. I've got to spend more time with Dave to really, really get into the weeds on where we're at with the wells and everything. But if you don't mind, I would like you for at least one more time.
In your packet, there's an update from Tori that has some information. The security cameras, the majority of that's been delivered that we had talked about. And also, David had given you an update on the well and what he's done. So if you have any questions after reviewing that, you can let Michael know, and I'm sure he'll forward it to who needs to do it. And if probably if necessary, we can get David up here to give you a question and answer session if you need it. He's done a really good job trying to get everything in place using that funding that we had appropriated. So, yep.
Granted, it was 2 hours long, but the short meeting that I had with Public Works and Utilities, I was impressed with personnel. And so I intend to meet with them again tomorrow, except for this time I'm gonna go visit them. They came to my office today, so I need to go see them and where they work. So yeah, if you do have any questions, please let me know, and we'll have Dave back in.
All right.
That's certainly good news for all of us to hear. We're happy and excited that you're on board.
Right. This time I'll entertain council comments. Miss Allen,
I don't have anything.
Mr. Boyce,
I have nothing.
Mr. Cardwell.
I was supposed to send out an email. I will get it sent out and everything. I did want to highlight one thing just to because you weren't here at this time. When we went to the conference, they did talk about specifically cybersecurity and how that can be like crucially impactful if we don't follow the correct steps. So I would just recommend that we actually probably get like almost that list of what we do beforehand, because if we go out of those areas, they just said that they actually wouldn't like completely remove coverage from us. So I just want to make sure that just in case like somebody was here alone at the office and we were having a cyber attack and the person were to call, we would be able to be covered for whatever is under that policy.
That's not an issue.
Thank you, Mr. Cardwell. Mr. Garrett,
I don't have any.
Ms. Spiegel.
I don't have anything tonight.
Any other business come before the Appomattox Town Council at this time?
I make a motion to adjourn.
A second.
Motion made, probably second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, folks. Thank y'all for coming out.
Thank you.